Depeche Mode are an English electronic band from Basildon in Essex. They were formed in 1980, and the initial lineup included a guy called Vince Clarke, who went on after he left Depeche Mode to form Yazoo, and then after that, Erasure. Depeche Mode were originally marketed as a teen idol pop band, and they soon made their sound darker and more adult. And they've had a relatively stable membership and have released 15 albums so far. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of the album Black Celebration by Depeche Mode, which was released in 1986 and was their fifth album, and it's my first time listening to it. So, how would I put this in a genre pigeonhole? Word I'm going to use is genre holing. I'm synth pop. So synth pop is used quite a lot for Depeche Mode. Synth goth, maybe it's not really full on goth. Post punk, maybe. Only just, I think, in the last month or so, getting my head around what post punk might actually mean. Let's do better description rather than genre holing, though. So, electronic. Definitely using samplers, and the sampler is the king here. They had apparently three principles that they tried to keep to when they were making music, not just for this album, but across lots of albums, which were no chords, make your own samples, and then never reuse the same sample in more than one song. Which apparently they stuck to pretty consistently. There were occasional times when they broke them, but I think they were the kind of rules that you break them if you knew why you were breaking them. So because it's kind of sample focused, musically within that, it's kind of, I guess, pop, really, but it's a bit darker than pop. It's musically fairly straightforward. Because of the sample focus, it feels quite clinical and clean and spiky. And so this is 1986, around then was, samplers were really starting to come through at this point. But often the stuff that was done with samplers had a focus more on hits and percussive sounds rather than on sustained sounds. And I think partly that's because samplers weren't as good at looping then as they are now. And so getting patty sounds through samplers wasn't quite so easy. So it's got that kind of chunky spikiness of sampler stuff. A bit like, so it reminded me in that sense of who are less known, or is it mainly one guy really, less well known than Depeche Mode anyway, and the Art of Noise, but the Art of Noise are less musical and more music concrete at times. Occasionally, I felt like it led to a slight awkwardness that came from the kind of way the patterns and motifs. So you'd have like a sound that would do a pattern and then it'd be a repeated motif. And then they'd have a few of those maybe going on at once. And sometimes those interactions are a little bit awkward, but not a lot at the time. There is a certain darkness to this, which I mentioned before, which is deliberate. They're trying, apparently, at this point, to distance themselves from their teeny popper image, particularly in Europe. So they were trying to, I believe this was their breakthrough album in the US. They hadn't really been in the US before this, and they managed to successfully get this kind of darker, more serious image in the US because they were new. And it was harder for them to do so in Europe, where they'd already been established as a kind of teen pop band. But they were trying to work against that. This album apparently is regarded as the start of a series of 4 artistically well-received albums. And I've certainly seen this album referred to by other people, in their influences in making their own stuff, obviously later than this. My memories of Depeche Mode are not actually of them as a teeny pop band, which is interesting. I mostly knew them from actually being at school and knowing people who were into various bands without actually really knowing the music. And I think that they were liked in my head, they were liked by people who liked other stuff like Joy Division and Soft Cell and kind of, electronic, but not really bubblegummy pop stuff. I've never been a particular fan of Depeche Mode. I used to jokingly at the time call them depressed mode, just to wind up the fans of Depeche Mode. I hadn't really pegged them as being predominantly electronic, though. So now they've kind of shifted in my head from that into kind of more in the orchestral maneuvers in the dark and Human League and people like that who are more kind of synth poppy stuff. Right. David, don't know how to pronounce it, Gahan, singing mostly, sometimes Martin Gore, whose name I know. David has a strong, strident, very 80s style male voice. There's a particular kind of tone of voice, and I'm interested in the fact that tones of voice seem to go in fashion. Gore's has got sort of a bit of a lighter voice and more like House Martin singer Paul Heaton or Vince Clarke, who has already left this band by now. The songs, excuse me, the kind of, I'm going to describe them as songs of vagueness, but a general feeling of darkness, alienation, emotional vulnerability, urban detachment, that sort of stuff. And I feel like in my listening, having read about their rules of no chords and no repeated samples, I started to fixate on that as I was listening and trying to analyse that. Did I enjoy it? I'm sorry to say, not hugely. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really engage. It didn't really engage me. I'm going to make it its fault, not my fault. It didn't draw me in for some reason. And this is interesting to me because I do like quite a bit of electronic stuff. But this one I didn't so much. Some of it I'd say is fairly memorable. So when I came back for a second listen, it was very kind of instantly recognisable again. So kind of, yeah, mixed feelings. I got a little bit of enjoyment out of it. I have given it a bit, just over 7 here as a score, which is it's a bit of a click point. In my scoring, it's all in my head, but I would say the difference between 6s and 7s is if I might choose to come back and listen to it of my own accord, it must be somewhere in the 7s. Maybe I would for this. So it's got 7.1. Okay, there we go. So that's what I think of this album. As always, I'd love to know what you think of this album. I know there may be some really, really kind of enthusiastic fans out there. Please feel free, if you're one of those, to let me know what I'm missing here, or just to, give a, big up for your favourite band or one of your favourite bands. Or if you feel the same as me, let me know. I'd love to hear from everybody and anybody who's got an opinion on this album, so please talk to me in the comments. But that's it from me for now.
Reminding us